I didn't go to Florida with the girlfriend like I told you.
Oh, yeah?
That was somebody else.
Nick Nolte and Rosanna Arquette star in Life Lessons, one of 3 tales told in a new movie called New York Stories. 3 stories set in New York City, each told by a different celebrated director. New York Stories is one of the new movies we'll be reviewing on this week's Siskel and Ebert. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is really our first 3 movies because New York Stories, as Gene said, is an anthology of 3 short films about New Yorkers directed by Martin Scorsese, Francis Coppola, and Woody Allen. And because each film stands alone with a different director, screenplay, and cast, we're going to review them that way as 3 different films. The first of the 3 is Martin Scorsese's Life Lessons, and it stars Nick Nolte as a rich and important New York artist who is obsessed by his 22-year-old so-called assistant, played by Rosanna Arquette. One day she announces she's leaving him.
Who's this guy? I know him, right?
Gregory Stark,
That kid, the comedian?
the performance artist.
Performance artist? What the hell is a performance artist? A person's an actor, a singer, a dancer. I mean, do you call the guy that picks up your garbage a sanitary engineer? A performance artist. And he left you? Now you see through that, right?
I don't care. It's over. That's all. Look, I'm moving out.
He is successful in convincing her to stay for a few days, but when another man talks to her at an art opening, he reveals his possessiveness and jealousy.
What?
Look, I don't know how to say this. I mean, I'm not your shepherd or anything, but people are laughing at you out there.
Why?
Well, you know that greasy-haired kid you're dancing with? Well, he's here to score and split. I mean, he does this everywhere he's invited. He likes to find some innocent kid, and then he preys upon him. I mean, you're a free agent. It's your life. But I'm telling you, if that low-rent hound does anything to hurt you or humiliate you...
I thought you were going to tell me that they were laughing at me because of my work.
Well, this is kind of worse, don't you think?
One of the qualities you can glimpse in both of those clips is the particularly alive camera style that Scorsese uses throughout his film, with his camera moving in rhythm with the movements and emotions of the characters. There's one fantastic scene where the painter goes into a frenzy of creation, slapping paint onto the canvas as the camera goes back and forth between his palette and his canvas, and rock music blasts from the cassette player. The camera follows his brush as if it's possessed. The story has great energy and some remarkably convincing dialogue between Nolte and Arquette. But the allegedly ironic ending seemed painfully predictable, and I wish he'd ended the film just a few moments sooner. You could almost guess the moment when he maybe should have ended it. But for me, Scorsese's film was the best of these 3 New York stories.
I think it is, too. And I think in dealing with an artist, I felt one of the things that he was doing was showing how beautiful a camera can move like a paintbrush. I think that was very much part of his pride as an artist talking about another artist. In addition, I think he's being very critical of artists who often use other people for stimulus and then can't relate to them, get very frustrated to use them, and it's only out of the frustration are they able to go back to their art. I mean, Nick Nolte is at his best when he's the most angry with Rosanna Arquette. That's when he creates the most, and but the way he treats her is just awful.
And his performance is good. We've seen another Nick Nolte movie in this period of time, which is a totally different character.
Farewell of the King, yeah.
Here, in this one, the way he uses some of the dialogue, at one point he says, he tells her he'd react like a gut-shot dog. Yeah. And at another point, he's talking about, I've been married 4 times since before you were born. The dialogue is
that's
so
Richard
good.
Price.
Richard Price's dialogue, and the way that he delivers it is a different kind of Nolte than we've seen.
Well, the other great thing with his character is that there's a shot of him that's fabulous, which is after he's painted and the relationship is lousy and all that, Nolte just flies back in this chair, and Scorsese just takes a shot of him, moves the camera in on him. We see a man who's fully drained. And I'll tell you, pushing all the emotions. That's been the hallmark of Scorsese's films. It makes them very special. It's done again here. The second New York story is by Godfather director Francis Coppola, and his story is a child's tale called Life Without Zoe, which updates the old New York story of Eloise, the spoiled little rich girl who lived in the Plaza Hotel. In this case, the time is now. Zoe lives at the Sherry Netherland Hotel, and her best friend, because her parents are frequently out of town, is a hotel butler.
Smell that hot chocolate. Come on, it's just like you like it. Sugar and sweetened low. 1 and 1.
Yeah, don't want to go to school. I don't feel good.
You don't want... You know, maybe you have the flu. It's going around. Let me... Ooh, I burned my hand. Quick, get the salve. Ooh, please, help.
When Zoe's mother does return home from a trip abroad, she finds that her daughter is having a wild party for friends.
So, is this what your father calls sophisticated? 12-year-old girls drinking strawberry daiquiris and reading Paris Vogue.
Mom, what are you doing here?
It's a warm welcoming. I'm your mother. This is my bedroom, and these are my earrings.
That's Talia Shire as the mother. Life Without Zoe is a very lightweight story by Coppola. He clearly intended to be the movie equivalent of a children's book. In fact, the titles of the thing are filmed by Francis. So he's really trying to tell a child's story. And the pictures are beguiling. But we're not sure what the story is about. Zoe is spoiled, but that's because her parents ignore her. The film needs more time, I think, with the parents, or at the very least, more time with the person who I thought was the most interesting character in the story, the butler. I think it could have been just about the butler and the girl relationship. As it stands, it's a well-directed but empty story, and I have to give it thumbs down.
Thumbs down for me, too. Don Novello played the butler, and it could have been, if it had been the butler story, how he deals with these rich people, that could have been fun. This movie is totally unfocused. The relationship between Zoe and her mother, Talia Shire, is utterly confusing.
It's not on the screen.
It's not. Well, first of all, there's a lot of tension, and she's a mean woman, and then later on they're best friends. We can't understand that either. Frankly, I was shocked. I would have thought that given the chance to make a short film, these directors who always are forced to work at 2 hours length would have had something they were saving up to really do something special with. And this is the sort of thing you'd see, you know, in some student film festival, except for the production value.
Well, that's what catches you, is visually it's interesting. I mean, the guy doesn't know how to shoot an uninteresting shot, even the last shot in the picture of
yes,
with
but
the
he
father.
Sure does know how to tell an interesting story.
In that case, you're right.
Okay, on to the third segment. And the third part of New York Stories was directed by Woody Allen. Now, people have been saying for a couple of years that they wish Allen would abandon his serious movies and get back to comedy, which he does best, allegedly. Maybe they'll like his short film here, which is named Oedipus Rex and which is intended as a comedy. But I think it's among Allen's weakest work. It stars Allen as a 50-year-old lawyer whose life is still controlled by his mother, who even visits him at the office.
Mother,
Say hello to Aunt Seal.
what are you doing here?
We just saw Cats.
Cats, Mr. Cats?
Cats, the show. Remember you gave me 2 tickets?
Cats. Cats, of course.
So I thought I'd take Aunt Seal to see your office. Isn't it beautiful? She doesn't hear a thing.
John, we're a little behind schedule.
Yes, sir. I'm all tied up.
This is Bates, the one with the mistress.
Now, there are some laughs there at that moment, but laughs that are extracted, not inspired. And there was a wonderfully inventive scene elsewhere in the movie where the mother is picked as a volunteer in a magic act, and then something truly mysterious happens to her. That moment is, or could have been, a great springboard for a movie that never materializes. Now, I don't want to give away any surprises, but I'll say that the movie goes completely wrong from the moment that his mother reappears after her magical vanishing act. If what happens in this movie happened in real life in New York City, the story wouldn't be how the Sun dealt with it, it'd be how 8 million New Yorkers dealt with it. And because Allen doesn't go with that, his ending seems so artificially limited and so constrained and contrived and manipulated that it's more of a distraction than an entertainment. That's too bad.
I think this is more of a sketch than it is a full-blown work. Now, of course, we get into the whole notion here of whether or not they can handle this short form, and whether, if given a full-length feature, if you'd done it on this subject, whether it would have worked. But I agree with you, it's a little bit less than you expect from him. I think that the sight gag, which we won't give away, is amusing, and I enjoyed it. But it is certainly turned off very quickly. I think you're accurate on that. And, you know, it almost is justification for his serious work, because I think when he tried to do this little exercise here, I don't think his heart was really in it.
I think Woody Allen can make comedy anytime he wants to, and I think he's a great serious director, too. But I think in this particular case, the problem is the special effect that's involved. And again, we won't give it away. But, I mean, New York wouldn't react that way. If that was going on, the entire city would come to a halt, and everybody would be in on the act.
Well,
it wouldn't just still be the neurosis of this little nerd.
A lot of people do get into the act, if you recall. Some of the other people join and they chime in and they root for the...
No, that's contrived one-liners by three or four extras.
I'm telling you, it's a sketch. I would have liked more. Coming up next, Nick Nolte plays a World War II soldier who deserts in Borneo and becomes a king to the native tribesmen. In Farewell to the King.
I've seen you do all manner of things, but now I see you, King.
Farewell to the King is a strange but familiar story, the story of a white man who becomes king to a bunch of natives in the jungle. Guys like this typically are both saint and sinner, and Nick Nolte plays more of a saint, an American soldier who deserts the army in Borneo in 1942, entering the jungle, eventually becoming a king to a native tribe. His tribal wife believes that the war he talks about will soon intrude upon their lives.
Forget this war. This war is for evil men.
A British officer and a sergeant find out about Nick Nolte's character. They want him to organize the tribe against the Japanese, but Nolte will not hear of it.
They don't know about your war. I'm their king, and I don't want them to know.
Naturally, the Japanese discover the tribe, and that leads to a predictable argument.
You did this with your radio?
Yes, we have a radio, you know that.
Well, the Japs heard it, they know you're here.
Well, more or less. If we can hear them, they can hear us, and if we stay on a bit too long, they can triangulate, and I suppose we stayed on too long.
This is familiar material, as earnest as it may be. I did not stop believing for a moment that I was watching Nick Nolte act. At the same time, I was touched by the eternal questions this movie asks. I don't know how you cannot be touched by it. It's an important issue. It's a close call, but I'm voting thumbs down.
I liked it more than you did, and I'm voting thumbs up because I found a certain fascination in the subject and in the way that John Milius, who wrote and directed this movie, is trying to create this character. Now, if you remember, Milius was one of the authors on Apocalypse Now, and if you will, the Nick Nolte character here is a first cousin of the Marlon Brando movie, of the Marlon Brando character in Apocalypse Now, who disappears into the jungle and becomes the king of a tribe. In that case, he goes off into some kind of a philosophical hinterland. In this movie, the guy is more of a kind of a 60s kind of guy. At one point, he says, from this moment forth, I will never again commit violence. Of course, by that point, he's killed everyone he could possibly find to kill, so it's a little late to reform. But what Milius keeps doing in this movie, and even in one of his movies like Conan the Barbarian, is finding a violent intellectual loner and then seeing how far you can push him.
Well, I was interested in the idea, but now, here's a real tough question. Did you see that character, or did you see Nick Nolte?
Well, of course, he's a familiar movie star. Movie stars have that problem. We recognize them.
Well, but the great ones disappear.
I thought well, they don't really disappear. Brando never disappeared. Come on.
I think so. In Last Tango in Last Tango in Paris, I'm watching. Oh no, I disagree with you, Roger. I'm watching that character.
Okay,
That's a
well,
very specific character.
Very happy for you.
And let's get back to this.
Marlon Brando.
And you said that
I'm watching Nick Nolte give a very good performance as a very interesting character.
No, I just saw Nick Nolte sitting there. When we come back, Morgan Freeman stars as a hard-boiled high school principal in Lean on Me.
You are not inferior.
And it stars Morgan Freeman in the story of a real-life character named Joe Clark, who whipped a New Jersey high school into shape just with the force of his personality. But what a personality. This guy is a cross between a Marine drill instructor and Captain Ahab. His first act after taking over the seriously troubled school is to gather all of the druggies and troublemakers on stage at an all-school assembly.
These people are incorrigible. And since none of them could graduate anyway, you are all expurgated. You are dismissed. You are out of here forever.
He is just as tough on the teachers, giving them a public humiliation.
Because you are failing to educate them. This is the posture that many of our students will wind up in. Only they'll be staring down the barrel of a gun.
The movie's best scene has the principal talking tough to a kid who admits he uses drugs, but wants another chance.
I'm going to go back on my own word just this once and let you back into my school. Because you're still a baby and you don't know nothing. But you understand this, boy. You're not going to get a moment's rest. I'm going to be on your case every minute.
There are basically two conflicting elements to Lean on Me, Morgan Freeman's performance and the movie's story. The performance is brilliant. It's very strong, but the movie lets Freeman down because it never deals with some very basic questions. This man that he plays may be a good disciplinarian, we can see that, but he's also an autocratic, egotistical martinet who may be more than a little crazy. And as he walks roughshod over everybody in his path, we think the movie may eventually deal with his bizarre behavior, but it never does. And even if this guy did clean up the high school, I'm still not sure that any real learning could go on there. One of the weirdest scenes in the movie has him ranting and raving on stage before a state exam as if school spirit alone was going to supply the right answers for those students. Lean on Me has a good performance, but it's a very confused movie.
Well, what's confused about it, I think, is that at its core, it's really just a television show. I mean, I think that's at the level that it plays at. You have this wonderful actor, Morgan Freeman, in it, but I suppose the argument that the filmmakers would make would be that you have to be a martinet to make anything succeed in high school. I mean, I think that thought is brought home. But you're right, we don't see the hard work of actual learning. We see a lot of acting, a lot of shouting. We see kids trotting up with, I have to say, predictable problems. It is an interesting issue. Do you throw all the drug people out of the school and on the streets and so that the real learning can be done? I think the film makes that point early on. But then, after a while, it's just angry behavior by the teacher and then a miraculous ending.
The funny thing about this movie is it's being compared to Stand and Deliver,
that was
the
a better
James
film.
Olmos film, which is about a teacher
Right.
who was really trying to teach his students how to learn.
Right.
This movie owes a lot more to The Principal, the James Belushi film about a guy with a baseball bat who's going to knock the heads of all the bad guys in the school.
Right.
This movie is clothed in a noble image,
Right.
but the fact is it's essentially a very simple-minded action film
I agree with you.
with a performance that's too good, much better than it deserves.
Okay, coming up next, John Lithgow plays a small-town butcher who thinks he has murdered his partner in the black comedy called Out Cold.
You always love chocolate.
Our next film is the offbeat comedy called Out Cold, starring John Lithgow as a butcher who thinks he murdered his partner, leaving him to freeze to death in the cooler. Actually, the guilty party is the dead butcher's wife, played by Terry Garr. She's delighted that Lithgow is confused.
Oh, Sonny. Sonny, you forgive me.
I do. Of course I do. I only hope that the police believe it was just an accident.
Randy Quaid plays a private detective who questions Lithgow in the butcher shop where the dead butcher hangs on a rack, the ice cream bar he was eating frozen to his head.
Your partner, Ernie, he's gone hunting. Hunting. Hunting beaver, from what I hear. What's that?
It's an ice cream bar. You want a bite?
I don't eat that stuff.
That's an amusing sight gag, but amusing is as far as Out Cold gets. This film would like to get bigger laughs, but making a comedy about dumbbells is tough to do. Only Terry Garr's character has a brain, and her character seems too smart to stay in this mess.
I think what they were basically trying to do here was make a movie like Blood Simple, which essentially had the same plot. Somebody is dead, one person thinks he did it, somebody else actually did do it. There's an adulterous situation going on, and neither party is really sincere.
Yeah, but that film had much more of a violent side to it and a much higher comic side.
Well, it was a much better film. The thing about this film is the director doesn't seem to really be able to get a handle on his balance between the comedy and the macabre. Now, that scene that you thought was amusing, where Lithgow was standing there trying to hold the ice cream bar, it goes on at excruciating length and at so many different camera angles that essentially it becomes annoying to us that Randy Quaid, the detective, doesn't see what everyone can see, which is there's something fishy going on right there. Now, done a different way, it could have been funny.
Okay.
But done the way it's done in this movie, it's simply annoying to the audience.
I think it's funny, but there are many other scenes where they should have known, especially when one of the other workers in the butcher shop is not allowed to go into the cooler all the time. That would tip people off. There's raw meat all over the floor and all that. Again, playing characters who are dumb. See, in Blood Simple, the characters were smart, but making these characters dumb, that requires very sophisticated writing to not make it, the film itself seems stupid.
The proof of what you're saying is that the most interesting character in the movie is the smartest one, Terry Garr.
Okay, now let's recap our reactions to the movies on this show. With New York Stories, Roger and I both liked only Martin Scorsese's story. We didn't care for Francis Coppola's work, and Roger cared less for Woody Allen's work than I did. He gives the movie thumbs down. I give it thumbs up because it's the only way you can see Scorsese's film, which I recommend you do see. A split decision on Farewell to the King. Roger liked Nick Nolte's portrayal of an intelligent warrior. I didn't believe in the character. 2 downturned thumbs for Lean on Me, a simplistic attempt to tell the story of a hard-as-nails high school principal. And 2 more downturned thumbs for Out Cold, a disappointing comedy with only one interesting character, Terry Garr.
So here we get into a matter of procedure on the show.
Yeah, I know.
We have 3 movies.
Yeah, I know.
In New York Stories.
Right.
You vote thumbs down on 2 of them, but you vote thumbs up on the whole movie because you don't want to throw out the baby with the dishwater.
That's really my feeling, which is that I wouldn't like to see, in other words, I use on the thumbs up thing, and maybe it's a good time to clarify this. I'm using the test of, if a friend asked me, should they go see it, what would I say? And I would say, yes, go see it because Scorsese is very good.
But always before, you've accused me of giving thumbs up to a movie because I like part of it.
Yeah.
Last week, you voted thumbs down on Paper House because you didn't like the last third.
That's correct.
Now you're voting thumbs up on New York Story because you like the first third.
But in this case, the first third is a whole separate unit. It's a tricky situation. I would like to see, more important, I would like to see them do more of these kinds of exercises. I hope that this film...
Oh, I would too. I'd like to see Chicago Story,
California,
Los Angeles story, San Francisco Story.
Yeah,
the anthology film was big in the 60s, went out of business. I think it'd be interesting to give more directors a chance to see if they have a short film in them.
Absolutely.
That's it for this week. Next week, we'll review Jackknife, a drama about Vietnam veterans starring Robert De Niro and Ed Harris, and also Skin Deep, a romantic comedy with John Ritter. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
Raisinets and Goobers are playing everywhere, starring plump, juicy raisins and great golden peanuts. Both now feature creamy Nestle milk chocolate. The great taste of Almond Delight. Crunchy almonds and crispy flakes with a hint of brown sugar make it taste so delicious. Almond Delight, it's the best. Clorettes, fast-acting, breath-freshening gums and mints. Only Clorettes has Actazole with chlorophyll. It gets rid of bad breath fast. Now you can have a California Raisin Singer on your own. This limited offer is just 99 cents plus proof of purchase. Visit your local store for details.